Today we are moving outside of New England to Fort Benning, Georgia. That's right. This I kind of wanted to do this for a couple different reasons. First of all, I had found or heard or read about a story of a general, I think, that would mow the lawn, ghost of such. Could not find it, didn't find it. Found a bunch of other ghost stories. Fort Benning, you are haunted. I don't know if you're quite haunted, like you need the Ghostbusters, Scooby Doo, and the Winchesters, but there's definitely you've got some stuff going on. It would seem, and these ghosts go from it looks like the Revolution up to present day. There's just a whole host of them. Most of the stories, because this video is going to be a little bit different, because I don't generally read from blog posts. I generally do notes, and I'm following a specific legend. There is no one legend here. There's a lot going on. Um, so I might actually go through and read some of the blog posts that I found just because there were so many, it didn't make sense to summarize them. Also, some of the pictures that you're going to see in this video are actually my dad's photos from when he was stationed at Fort Benning during his basic training for Vietnam. So they're about 50, 60 years old. So they're not going to correspond to any of the places probably that exist now. They're not labeled, so some of them might actually be from overseas. I think the ones I pulled out are from base. That's a weekend project that needs to be taken care of. Now we're going to start off with the legend of Colonel John Tate. And this story came specifically from Military Living, two different blog posts from 2016 and 2017. As usual, all of the links will be in the description if you want to check out some of these stories for yourself or dig more into them. And if you've had any experiences, if you're a veteran or if you are stationed at Fort Benning, you know people that lived in the area, leave them in the comments. I'd actually be very curious to see what people have to say. So let's get started. So the land that Fort Benning sits on was originally inhabited by the Creek Indians, or as they're known, oh, I'm going to mispronounce this, I think, the Muskogee? Muskogee? Muskogee. That looks right. Their village, Kashida, or Peacetown, was located where Fort Benning's main post is. And legend has it that the one last English agent sent to this area to muster support for King George among the Creeks was named Colonel John Tate. Apparently, either I mistyped something or the computer auto-corrected it to the Greeks. No, I don't think so. That's not who that was. He would go on to marry one of the chief's daughters, and then depending on the record, it's either Sahoya or Sahoy. And he lived among the Creeks as one of their own. Around 1781, Tate fell ill and died deranged between the Flint River and the Chattahoochee, en route with a party of Creeks headed for what would become known as the Battle of Augusta. The party lost heart for the fight and returned to Kashida to bury Tate. Supposedly, Tate did not go quietly beyond the Veil and has been haunting Fort Benning as long as there's been a Fort Benning. And the records show that from October of 1932, there was an editor warning women not to venture out because they were being chased by a dark apparition or an apparition of a man. And supposedly, apparently, Tate would appear on horseback and chase automobiles, and there had been a number of car accidents attributed to this, but the author does make a point in saying they don't know who the horseback riding figure is. People are attributing it to Tate, but he didn't have a horse. At least when he died, he's generally depicted as walking. So they're not quite. They admitted they're like we're not sure where the horse comes from, folks, but there it is. It's been said that you can hear Tate's hobnailed boots walking across floors. He would make attempts to move things around, but wasn't very good at it. It's said that he hangs out at Building 35, just a short walk from Riverside, back when it was home to the Western Hemisphere Institute for Security Cooperation. I'm hoping I didn't mistype any of that. He was spotted every so often in the history book section of the library wearing a three-pointed hat, a cape, and carrying a saber. He would slam doors, move books, pile chairs on tables, and lock people out of their offices. Apparently, once the building was renovated, his spirit just moved on or hasn't been seen. At the time of this, which I think was 2017 when this article was written, so Did he come back? Do you see him again in the library? There is another ghost, David Richard Parkman, who haunts buildings along the Santa Fe Road. He appears to be, I love this, he appears to be a fairly run-of-the-mill haunting. He throws things, clears shelves, and shows himself mostly to custodians and employees who show up early or stay up late. He's the least notable of the ghosts on posts. What a great... Isn't that I actually have to say that I think another video, if I can get a chance to do it, Connecticut has one of those ghosts. It's a green lady. I did a short about her. I'm going to go back and I think redo a long form video. But I think in one of the articles I found, it's like, she is the most uninteresting Connecticut ghost. So we can set these two up in the afterlife and they can both be very uninteresting together. The Parkman family owned the land since the 1930s, and their farmhouse sat on the hill to the northwest where the vacant former Martian Army Comedy Hospital now sits. This community was called Redbone. David Richard Parkman is buried in Linwood, Columbus, where you'll also find a grave to Brigadier General Henry Benning. Apparently there's a nanny ghost of Baltzell Avenue on the main post. She was an out-of-work nursemaid or nanny, and she just carried on her job in the afterlife. Apparently, she likes to take charge of children in different houses. It didn't say a house, but she likes to take charge of children in the house and usually appears wearing a long dark dress, a floor-length apron, and a white cap. So her clothing sounds like it would probably be from the turn of the century. So, which century? It would be I would say the 1880s, 1890s, early 1900s. Just from the description of the clothes, it has that kind of maybe 1880s, I would say 1880s to like early 1900, 1910s time period from the sound of it. That's what the clothing sounds like to me. One resident said she often found her baby playing with someone who wasn't there. The baby wasn't old enough at the time to pull himself upright, but his mother would sometimes find him sitting in the middle of the room after he had been put down in his crib for a nap. So apparently what she does is if there's no children, she just likes to play with the electronics, turning things on and off. She will play the harmonica. It's normally after when everyone goes to bed. I actually went back to double check that because I thought, no, I definitely mistyped that. I did not. She plays the harmonica. Interesting. So there is another story from a different blog that will be posted of a bloody-faced soldier. This was written by the soldier's sibling. So this was kind of a second-hand account. And apparently this person was driving home near Harmony Hill, and he saw a man walk out toward the road wearing BDUs, or the battle dress uniform, which is a type of camo, I believe. I will do the best I can to find pictures for the civilians in the audience so that you know what uniform is being referenced. Yeah, I'm sure someone in the comments is going to correct me if I'm wrong, which is fine. I'm just kind of winging it. This kind of went a completely different direction than I had intended when I started out to do this video. So I am reading my summarized notes basically, and that's why I was like, I'm going to go back and I think read the blogs for some of these because there's a lot going on there. Like, I don't know if these are lost souls, if they're souls that came back attached to things, like obviously to their bodies or to materials, maybe weapons, or I don't know what goes back to the family for personal effects. I would assume quite a lot would go back. What would stay, because I don't know if it's a spirit attachment, if it's a lost soul, if they're connected to a person, if it's like this is the last place that they remember being, so this is where they've come back to. It's really hard, especially in this case of this soldier, or the ghost that the ghost is a soldier and the person that saw the ghost is also a soldier. And so yeah, so the ghost is wearing the BDUs, which was used from the 80s to the early 2000s. And he had blood all over his face, and he approached OP and asked the man for directions to post. After OP gave him the directions, he went to look in his mirrors, and the ghost was gone, completely gone. Okay, so the first story that we have of someone seeing a ghost on Firewatch comes from the same person that saw the bloody faced soldier. And he also mentioned that he saw a ghost on Firewatch one night. He says he saw a man in UPC, and the poster had to look it up. It's a universal camouflage pattern, which was used from 2005 to 2019, crying on a bench somewhere in the B Company barracks at or near Airborne School. He says that this could not have been a real person because the lights in the room were motion activated and the lights were not triggered by the man's presence. He said he was watching the cameras and no one came in or out of the room. Now, this one is interesting because it's labeled long black-haired phantom. And I'm kind of wondering if this is a white lady, and you'll understand why. So, since we moved here, I've experienced some rather unusual things. We live in the Boughton Heights village. I first noticed early in the morning after my husband left for PT, the front door sounded like it opened and then it would shut on its own. I thought at first maybe he was coming back in because he forgot something, but I looked out the window of the car. I looked out the window. Oh, to look for the car. I'm going to edit this. Sorry. The editor in me just stepped in and was like, that's not right. But I looked out the window for the car and he's already left. My husband and I didn't have any children, and once I was home alone, while he was at work, I could swear I heard kids' footsteps running up and down the stairs. Then, just 3 days ago, I was driving home from Kelly Hill. I was taking the main road from Martin Army that passes Davis Hill to Boughton Heights. After about 15 minutes, it was the short way home. It's very secluded, no homes or buildings are near. It was about 10 p.m. at night, and I was the only car on the road, and they had their brights on. I saw a woman or man with long black hair standing in the ditch on the side of the road right next to the turn into Davis Hill. I took a second look and no one was there. I couldn't make out what the person was wearing or what it looked like other than they had very wild long black hair. It could be a Native. Actually, in fact, reading it again, it could be a Native American ghost. I mean, it was Native American land, so that's a possibility. Could also be a white lady. Now, depending on the tradition of the white lady, some of them are vengeance-seeking ghosts, and some of them are just lost souls. So that's interesting. I'd kind of like to hear more about that one because I feel like there's a story there as to why that ghost is hanging around. So there's a bunch of these. I apologize that this video is a little bit disjointed. There was no way to weave these together because they're fascinating stories. But they're outside of basically Colonel Tate. There was no continuity. There was no one legend. When I looked up ghost stories of Fort Benning, I got a whole bunch of stuff. And here we are. So this is from 98. This was someone else that is on Firewatch or Fireguard. What is the actual term? Is it Firewatch or Fireguard? I feel like I have heard both. Yeah. Or maybe I'm making one up. I don't know. No, I'm not sure. Anyway. I was stationed at Fort Benning in Georgia during the fall of 98. I was in airborne school at the time. A group of buddies got together and we went to Atlanta for a Metallica concert. After a night of being up watching the concert, I received a call and had forgotten that I had 24-hour fire watch that Saturday. Tired and without sleep, we drove back in time for me to make my shift. The day went well, but I was super tired by 4 a.m. I was in the barracks on the third floor hall, and from the end of the hallway, a soldier in BDUs came out from the second to last room. He went to the window and peered out the window for almost 5 minutes. He turned and walked back into the room. From the other end of the hall, I had said good morning, but got no response. Feeling that this was a little weird, I decided I should go investigate. I walked down the hall, walked down to the door he had entered. I knocked and got no response. I tried the door and it was unlocked. As I opened the door, the room was being used for storage beds. The entire room was full of beds. There was no one. Continue on next page. There was no one in the room. The man that came out was as easy to see as you or I. It was one of the scariest things that's ever happened in my life. This sounds like this was told to this poster from their parents. This was posted in 2019. So this comes to me from my parents who told me this years later in my life. When I was 3 years old, we lived in Fort Benning in one of the townhouses there. I don't recall the name of the place, but I remember it being a townhouse that was half bricked. It had a screened front door and a large fenced backyard with forest behind it. I was the only child at the time when we moved in and gained an imaginary friend. My parents dismissed it as being normal since I was alone and had a large imagination. They would find me often laughing and talking to nothing. When asked, I would answer that I was talking to Bobby. They asked me to describe Bobby once, and I described him as a man who was dressed like a soldier. Again, it was dismissed because they assumed I was creating a friend out of my dad being in the army until things began to happen. Isn't that always the way? Always the way. One night, our entertainment center came on full blast in the middle of the night, scaring everyone. We had no explanation as to how it happened. Then another time, my father awoke to find his military boots moved to the front door as if someone took them off when coming in. When asked if I did it, I said it was Bobby. Apparently, my dad and grandma once saw a man standing in the upstairs hallway as clear as day. I have no idea if anyone has had similar stories to this, but it doesn't surprise me that the place might have something attached to it. That is quite possible. It actually could be maybe someone that used to live there, and maybe has passed away and had maybe good memories of the house. It could be that that was where they lived when they passed. Maybe they had children or grandchildren, um, and that they were interacting with the kids. It doesn't sound like a malevolent force, at least just from that short story. Um, and yeah, so it could just be someone was just watching over him as a child or her. I don't remember if it said, but so this it's actually really funny because someone actually commented from 2020 and with their own ghost story. It's like, hi, I hope you can see this eventually. I also lived in Fort Benning when I was 1 to 4 years old, and this was during the years from 95 to 98. I had an imaginary friend named Lieb, which means love in German. The home you're explaining to me sounds like the same place I used to live in. The townhome was also bricked and had a forest in the backyard. My imaginary friend always wore green, which may sound like a soldier you saw, even though I don't remember him wearing a uniform. All I remember was him wearing the color green all the time. We moved in the summer of 98 because we got stationed in Kansas. When I left Fort Benning, I was worried about losing my imaginary friend, and he told me it was okay to leave because he had finally found his wife. My parents told me that it was very detailed what I did with him, such as bringing him to the water park with us, even having a conversation with him and holding hands. It's weird because after leaving Fort Benning, I never saw him again. The name is completely different than what you said, but everything else fits the description. Interesting. But if he found his wife, oh, that's interesting. Huh. Was she another lost soul, perhaps? Or did something happen? Maybe by spending time with you allowed him to heal some of those wounds, and someone from the other side was able to come and get him to help him cross over. Oh, that would be fascinating. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of that. I wonder if that could happen. Maybe. I mean, doing psychopomp work, generally, in shamanic practice, when you do psychopomp work, it's because there is a soul that's stuck. and they don't want to move on, or they're lost. Sometimes there are lost souls, people that die very abruptly and don't realize they're dead. So both of those could be possibilities, and that, I don't know, that's really interesting. I'd be curious to talk to someone about that and see if that is a possibility. If, you know, he spent enough time here on this earthly plane interacting with maybe enough children that he was able to find, or someone was able to come and get him. Moving on. Let's see. I lived in Davis in 2011. I heard tapping on the window in my bedroom, and so did my kids. The water in the kitchen turned on by itself before. My hallway door that closed off the main part of the house from the hall and bedrooms used to open and close by itself all the time. I had strange thumping and scratching noises that came from the shed in the carport. Things came up missing. I heard footsteps down the hall. I would wake up in the middle of the night to the living room TV blaring full blast from the living room, and all the lights would be on after I turned everything off. There was no timer on the TV. Sweetheart, you have a poltergeist. Like, I know you don't live there anymore, but this is either a very irate spirit or it's a poltergeist. Both, more than likely. One night I was in the living room when the door to the carport opened and closed. I went to see, and no one was there inside or out, and the chain to the door was swinging. My husband had a heavy ball hitch from his truck that had been on the top of the fridge for months. All the kids were asleep. Then my husband and I heard a loud bang from the kitchen. We went to look, and the ball hitch was lying in the middle of the kitchen floor, and no one was even near the kitchen or the fridge. My neighbor was outside one night and saw a little boy with a backpack in my driveway trying to open my carport door. Then he disappeared. My dog refused to go in the hall that ran from the front door and would not go into the hall where the large pantry closet was. She yelped once. When she did, she would go anywhere else in the house. My home definitely had activity, and I did not believe in that stuff until I lived there. Yeah, this sounds like this is an angry spirit. Listen to your pets. Small animals, your animals and small children, actually even teenagers, because teenagers tend to be a magnet for the paranormal for different reasons. Small children can generally see spirits because they are so close to the veil. Realistically, they haven't learned that they're not supposed to see stuff. And then, depending on how you parent them, will either keep them open longer or shut them down longer. But your small children and your animals will definitely be able to let you know if there's something else going on. Your teenagers will as well, but they also may be bringing the stuff in because they're just the hormones, and whatever's going on is just glom. So I still stand by what I saw. It was not imagined. I felt eerie when I would go down the hall alone. I always felt like someone was in the room with me. The very first occurrence was when we moved in, and my pictures in my bedroom would be on my floor for no reason. This only happened like twice, but they were small and light and not breakable, so I didn't think anything of it. My oldest swore that whatever was there talked to her and would wake her up. That's not good. My neighbor was over one night when the hall door was opening and closing. No one was in the hall. Everyone was in the living room. She asked whatever it was to knock it off. Then we all heard water running out of nowhere. I went to find the water dribbling in my kitchen sink. No one was in there either. I think Fort Benning has a lot of history, and there is a lot of activity everywhere. I was TDY at Fort Benning, Georgia. I was put up in the hotel by the National Infantry Museum. One Friday night, after briefings and classes were done, the guys wanted to go out and get something to eat downtown. I didn't go because I had to study for an exam for college. As the night went by and I became more and more sleepy from studying, I swear I heard a horse in the hallway. I first thought it was maybe the room across from mine with the door open, with a movie playing. Then I heard it stomping the ground as if it were digging at something. Then I looked out my peephole of my door and saw that the room across from mine was closed. Then I heard it again. That sounded like it was down the hallway. I was reluctant to open my door, so I called the front desk, and no answer. Of course, my mind was racing with a little fear and curiosity. I waited until I heard it again to open my door. I made sure I had my phone ready to record. I know what you're to record. I know what you're thinking. Hell no. Then all of a sudden, the sound of a horse was down the other side of the hallway. I started to shake and a cold sweat came down my forehead. As soon as I unlatched my door and quickly opened it, it seemed as if someone or something kicked my door. It scared the brave out of me and I ran to the windows as if I would escape. I didn't know what to do. I used my cell phone to call the front desk and finally the woman answered. We could barely hear each other because I guess my signal wasn't good. No, your signal was probably fine. You had a lot of interference from the spirits in the room. I would bet good money on that because they can't interfere with electronics. And I would not be surprised at the electrical energy that they were just, yeah. I have a feeling your signal was fine. You just had a lot of interference going on. I was literally screaming into the phone to have someone come to my room. I told her my door was stuck. Yeah, it was stuck. It was being held shut. As I waited frightened, there was another big kick to the door, but on the top of the door this time. Finally, after almost thinking I was going to die, the hotel night shift woman knocked on my door and called to me. I was in relief. I ran quickly to the door and tried to open it, but it really was stuck shut. I started freaking out, then the TV in the room turned on. And at this time I was ready to break a window. Then the woman said she would be right back with maintenance management night shift. Then the door made an unlocking click noise. I went to the door. It opened easily. I ran out of the room and down the stairs. The woman was on the phone with maintenance. She saw me and with a look on her face behind me, she just stood there with the phone on her cheek. Of course, what did I do? Yep, I turned around and saw a big, humongous black spider hanging from the ceiling. I took off my flip-flop. Why? I took off my flip-flop and swatted it to the floor. Then I stomped it, and a bunch of little baby spiders scattered everywhere. There must have been 100. I went into man mode, started killing baby spiders. Then the woman and I heard next page, horse trotting down the road. It was loud as we were in the hotel. Let's just say I will never go back to that hotel again, and probably not even Fort Benning, Georgia. That was from 2017. I just want to know why you felt the need to kill the spider. Like, that sounds like a nightmare. That is my nightmare. It's another two page one. So let's see. My husband is active duty. We live on Devore Court here in Boughton Village Heights. When we first got here, it never crossed my mind that these places would be haunted. I have no idea why it never did. Well, first of all, I don't think most people, unless you're sensitive, expect homes to be haunted. I know that is a nightmare of mine, to move into a haunted house. And it's funny because I remember before my parents moved, my mother and I would look at houses and we'd no, not that one. Not that one. Because sometimes you can tell just from the pictures. But I think most normal people don't expect their houses to be haunted. And I'm just abnormal. Or abnormal, if you will. We have one child who is now 2 years old. He sleeps by himself with the door shut and a nightlight on. The first month we were here, I'd hear footsteps on the stairs. Being that they are just wood steps, I figured that maybe it was the wood itself. My husband had to work out in the field, so he was gone for about a week, and this is when everything started to happen. I heard the footsteps once again. Strange things about the footsteps are that I would only hear them in the middle of the stairs and not the bottom or the top, just the middle. At the time, I didn't have a phone, and I was so scared, so the next night, to prove myself that there isn't anything there, I poured baby powder in the middle of the stairs when I went up for bed. My son was already asleep, and now I know what time it usually happens, around 1:30 to 3:30 in the morning. It's when you hear things. I started to fall asleep. Then I heard the footsteps again. My heart was pounding because I was so scared that it was real. Once the noises had stopped, I got up to check the stairs. I checked on my son first. He was sound asleep. Then I walked over to the stairs, and there it was, a couple of footprints in the baby powder. I was scared then, but now I learned to live with it, and that was the last time I heard the footsteps. Knock on wood. Okay, so this is a continuation. So this is from 2017. So now my mother-in-law and her kids are down here visiting us, and nothing has happened. Usually my son is the type of baby that once he's asleep, you won't see him till morning. About 3 nights ago, my husband and I woke up in the middle of the night. I went to use the bathroom and woke him up getting back into bed. We laid down and heard our son getting mad at something. I thought he might have been talking in his sleep. I went to go check. My son was sitting in his crib yelling, "No, stop." There was nothing there but black. Once I took him into my arms and he held me tightly and started to cry. Once I turned on the lights, he yelled once more, "No." That night I had him sleep with me and yelled at whatever was there. I said to leave my family alone, and whoever was there isn't wanted and should leave. Since then, I haven't heard anything. We do still see black figures out of the corner of our eyes, though. That's something that won't change. Interesting. Hmm. I'm reading the last line. We do still see the black figures out of the corner of our eyes. Well, at least it listened. You set boundaries and it listened. So that's the important thing. Um, that escalated. That really did. Like it went from just footsteps to, I don't know if it was attacking your son, but it was definitely trying to scare him. Interesting. I don't know what to make of that. Actually, there was another one I wanted to read from a different website. So we're gonna do that one. So previous to this incident, I had never experienced seeing any ghosts or apparitions. I attended infantry basic training, advanced individual training at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the Harmony Church area from January through March of 1981. The barracks were two-story World War II era buildings. Anyone who's been in the Army knows what fire guard is. Okay, so are the two terms interchangeable? I guess. I was on I was on fire guard early after midnight one morning. The fire guard was required to have a flashlight, and you had to patrol the building constantly during your 1 hour tour of duty. The barracks were completely dark and were open bay. There was a really bad thunderstorm going on. At the time of this incident, pouring rain, lightning, and thunder was constant. The the area outside the area was lit outside the area was lit, but only by a couple of street lights on power poles. I was on the first floor and was standing at the door of the barracks. I could see the fire guard's flashlight in the adjacent building, approximately 25 yards away. The fire guard was close to the building's front door. I looked through the window to my left towards where the CQ was on duty. A huge bolt of lightning lit up the sky at that moment. On the sidewalk at the end of the building, approximately 50 feet away, I saw an older man with long gray hair and a long gray beard. He was wearing what appeared to be cut-off jean shorts and had no shirt on. He was standing very rigid. I thought maybe I was just worn out and seeing things. How could someone be standing in the pouring rain like that with no shirt or rain gear on? About 15 seconds after I saw the old man, the fire guard from the adjacent building came running towards our barracks and came through the door. He seemed upset and asked me, "Did you see that, old man?" I almost passed out, knowing that what I saw was witnessed by another person. Needless to say, I don't think I slept very well the rest of the morning. I brought up the subject to my drill sergeant the next morning and wasn't ready for his response. I figured the drill sergeant would tell me to move along, private. He stated something along the lines of, "Yeah, I've seen him too." I was floored. They are posting the story in hopes that someone who has served in the Harmony Church area of Fort Benning has experienced anything like this. We live in Custer Terrace. One night my little boy jumped into bed with me and I told him, "You're too old to be sleeping with me. I have a parent-teacher conference in the morning and you have to quit waking me up." I picked up my little boy and carried him back to his room. When I walked in, the room was ice cold, and I felt the most evil presence. I had never felt that way before, but when it was present, you just know I could tell I'm starting to get tired because I can't read right. When I walked in, the room was ice cold, and I felt the most evil presence. I had never felt that way before, but when it is present, you know it is just evil. We ran back to my room and jumped into the bed. I could not see it, but I could feel it all around me. My little boy was shaking and too scared to cry. I did not know what to do, so I just prayed out loud. My little boy started to scream, "Shut up, Mommy, you're making it worse. Shut up." He had never spoken like that to me before. It felt as though it was going right through me, and I was terrified. I could literally feel the separation between my spirit and my body. I started cussing at it, and it went away. I could hear it in the rafters like wood moving. I thought I might have imagined the whole thing, but after talking to the neighbor, she said she had a similar experience, so I went to visit the chaplain. The priest came to our place and placed holy water over every entrance and window. We did not have any more problems. 4 years later, we moved to another place on Arrowhead Road. Besides the constant bad dreams I had whenever my husband was not home and that eerie sensation of being watched, the big one came when we were all home. We had been barbecuing in the backyard. I was in the kitchen when my daughter came running in saying, "Mommy, there is a mean man bothering me." I went outside to check it out, and there was no one there. She came in again and went to play in her room. My husband joined me in the kitchen. My dog's ears stood up, and we heard the back screen doorknob turn. The door opened and slammed shut. My husband took off outside, trying to find what just went out or came in. We were totally freaked. I asked my daughter what this mean man looked like. She responded he had boots and a funny hat. This is from 2007. What's the funny hat? Like a tricorn hat? Like from the Revolution? Or well, Georgia was part of the Civil War, but would those be considered funny hats? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. It's been a long time since I studied the Civil War. But yeah, what's a funny hat? I want more detail. But you did the right thing. You did do the right thing by calling in the chaplain. What he also should have done, and maybe you didn't think to ask for it, and maybe he didn't think of it, is you also should have had the whole family blessed, the house blessed, but also all of you, because that way it severs a connection if there's a connection to you through the blessing. That's also why if you run into the situation, energy workers are so good. In 2007, I doubt anyone would have even thought of it, but a lot of energy workers learn how to cut cords and cut those connections so that spirits hopefully don't follow you around. But so hopefully you didn't have any more problems with this spirit after this incident. Doesn't sound like it because this is where it says continued on the next page. Does this story continue? No. Okay. This is a different story. Okay. So it sounds like you didn't have any problems, OP, after that, but yeah. When that happens, and you would prefer to work through a priest or a minister, a rabbi, whatever your holy person of choice is, have them bless the house, and then in some situations have them bless the family as well, and that will help. But I'm gonna call it here. If you'd like me to go through either maybe any more of these blog posts, whether it's from Fort Benning or if you have another post or other places you'd like me to look, if you like this style of video, let me know. It's a little different than I normally do. But if you enjoyed it and you like hearing other people's ghost stories and you like hearing my thoughts during them, after them, whatever, I'd be happy to try it out and give it a shot, see what happens. But yeah, Fort Benning, you you got some ghosts, my friends. So stay safe out there, everybody. I don't know why I want to say throw some salt around. Cleanse your homes. That's actually the best thing you can do is just cleanse your home when you move in. And it doesn't matter where you are. If you are on a military post or you're in an apartment or you're just moving from house to house, whatever it is, the best thing you can do is to just cleanse the energy, get the past energy out, set up a barrier, and see what happens. So yeah, all right. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.